It's on the edge of a canyon, the realtor said, raising his eyebrows when I offered to buy the home without having looked at it first. Fine, I said, though I wasn't sure exactly what the realtor meant. Then I didn't say anything for a long time because I was thinking of Frau Keeler's death. And it seemed the realtor wanted to repeat what he had just said, his eyebrows even more tense. Some things aren't worth looking into, I said, and the realtor's eyebrows slackened a bit. Then I asked, where are the papers? Here they are, he said. I'd like to sign them, I said, and he pushed them across the table with his middle finger. What an ugly finger, I remember thinking, while I signed the papers, and then I got up and I left. We are said to die of one thing on paper, but it is entirely of something different that we die, I thought as I left the realtor's office. And it is dangerous to take the discrepancy between the two for granted, what one actually dies of and what one is said to have died of on paper. There's hardly ever a correspondence. And I'm thinking now that some people's deaths need to be thoroughly investigated. I'm more than certain that I thought this then, too, as I left the realtor's office, but the thought wasn't as highly illuminated in my head. I'm thinking now, it isn't every day one comes across a death that is especially timely and magnificent. For example, Frau Keeler's death. And then one really has to wonder, one has to begin to think, to retrace the mental footsteps of the deceased person, Frau Keeler, since the chance that such a timely death would remain unexplained on paper is that much more significant. And it is true that certain events of the unfriendliest category are now unfolding. I cannot put my finger on these events. I cannot pinpoint the exact dimensions of their effect. The truth is, I haven't been the same since Frau Keeler's death. Some deaths are more than just a death, I keep thinking, and Frau Keeler's was exemplary in this sense. And it is the same thought since I left the realtor's office. Some people's deaths need to be thoroughly investigated, and yes, I think then, yes, I bought this home in order to fully investigate Frau Keeler's death. And now that I own it, the home Frau Keeler used to own, I'm beginning to witness certain events. I can't help but think, he died just in time, Frau Keeler. He must have known certain things to have known to die just in time. Some deaths can only be understood in relation to the events that proceed from them. People pretend it is the affairs that lead up to a person's death that are most important, that life accumulates up to a point, the point at which one does one's dying, and that nothing after that is relevant to the life one leads. But no, I think, and the word no moves across my mind the way the realtor's finger inched its way across the desk. Things are illuminated retrospectively, I keep saying to myself, and it is these unfriendly events that will tell me the most about Frau Keeler's death. Only they are still forming, they are still taking shape. I'm only beginning to put my finger on them as directly as the realtor put his finger on the papers when he slid them across the desk. It is not for nothing that the reels in our minds start revolving at a speed we might find difficult to bear. And timely as it was, Frau Keeler's death raises questions unanswered by hospital records or any other death-related paper there is. Hospital records do not reflect the whole truth, nothing close to it. How is one to make sense of the facts that are listed when the deceased person's place of birth and death are so distant from one another? How is one to know how the person got from one end of the earth to another? And more odd things are listed in the margins: occupation at time of death, surgeon, butcher, logger, office clerk, listed on the one hand, and burial, cremation, removal on the other. It is not as if the person died in the midst of performing their job, or perhaps they did. Perhaps they had a cardiac arrest while harvesting trees in the forest, and they looked up and thought, I am a logger, and then dropped dead. What an absurd list of facts. There are no complete sentences. How is one to conclude anything? And the reasons given for Frau Keeler's death are nothing short of nonsense, and if they do make sense, their sense is limited. Everything is listed as plainly as a chicken lays its eggs. All the death-related records indicate the same thing. They all point to the same condition. I have leafed through them all, traced time and place of death with my finger. But who, I keep thinking, who would undertake such massive coordination? Who would want to hide Frau Keeler's connection to the unfriendly events? Sheet after sheet, the same thing is written, which means the same thing must be read. Frau Keeler died of lung cancer, cancer of the lungs, pulmonary cancer, and the handwriting is always the same, a low, squiggly line resembling rolling hills with a dark horse or two traversing them. Cancer. Frau Keeler died of pulmonary cancer, and it's a squiggle, a line, nothing else. But no, I lied. To be fair, I omitted, I didn't lie. There's one record that does not match the others. There is one discrepancy. And how could I have not seen it before? The unfriendly events cannot hide forever. I must look for incongruities. I must probe them with my finger. The truth always gives way. I've heard the saying hovering beneath one's nose, and it's true. I found the truth in the drawer. I opened the drawer, and it was simply there, a sheet of paper, like any other sheet of paper, except a little tarnished on the edges, a little yellowed here and there. The ink smudged in certain places so that I could tell which keys, while the document was being written, had been held the longest on the typewriter. But the words can still be made out. One never needs all the letters to make out a word. The word is there in the brain, an image of it one can pull into the light and think, that is the word that is written there, death certificate, and then Palma de Mallorca, next to place of death. Quite suddenly, I am confused. Some things I keep thinking are unprecedented. And what can a person do? The name Palma de Mallorca, as if it were a ghost, has taken hold of my tongue. Palma, I keep saying, Palma. The word lingers in my mouth, hums in my brain. I see myself opening the desk drawer as I opened it that day. I must have seen the paper and returned it to the drawer right away, shut it out of my mind. Why else would it take hold of me this way? Things creep up on us when we deny their existence, and of all the papers, it is the only one that reads Palma de Mallorca, place of death. The words peel off the page to sing brightly before my eyes. I must retrace. It was a few days after I had moved into the home, this home I had just bought thinking it belongs to Frau Keeler, though I am now beginning to suspect that I am wrong, or that there are two Frau Keelers, the right one and the wrong one, and that the death certificate in the drawer belongs to one, and the rest of the papers to the other, but this is a matter for later. In any case, I had just moved in. I was grinding beans for my morning coffee when I spied from the kitchen window behind some trees a small circular wooden cabin, a yurt. From where I was standing in the kitchen, behind the sink, looking through the window, it seemed the door to the yurt was unlatched. It was swinging to and fro against the wind. I decided to go and have a look. I crossed the yard and walked through the trees I had seen from the window. Their branches interweaving made a huge tapestry above me, and then, as if from nowhere, it was sky again. The trees were behind me, and I was standing in a clearing with the yurt directly in front of me. It all seemed quite sudden, for when I was standing behind the sink and looking through the kitchen window, the yurt seemed to be appearing from another time altogether, it was as though the yurt had traveled through time to make a momentary appearance, and I couldn't reconcile this feeling with how close the yurt was to the house when I ventured toward it. There it was, right behind the cluster of trees, and the door to the yurt was creaking loudly since the wind had picked up in the time it had taken me to walk toward it. I pushed the door all the way open and stepped in. It was pitch dark inside. No light from the world was creeping through. I still had a box of matches in my hand, since right before spotting the yurt I had wanted to light the stove to make my coffee. I lit one, the wind blew. I lit another and held it right above my face, where one would hold a portable torch if one had one, and so rows and rows of shelves on the walls. I wanted to walk toward them, but there was something obstructing my path. It looked like a wooden canoe, and then I saw an oar, and the match blew out. I couldn't confirm anything. I lit another match and looked down at my feet. There was, in fact, a canoe, and I stepped into it and out of it on the other side, and came close enough to the shells that I was able to touch them. They were dusty. I was holding the match in my other hand, and I could see things only in small portions as I held the light of the match up to them. I must get out of here, I thought, and then the wind slowed and I could hear the leaves shuffle in the low breeze outside just beyond the yurt. There is a reason for everything, I said to myself, a reason for having come to the yurt, and then his name formed in my chest. Frau Keeler, I murmured. I hummed. The wind picked up. Frau Keeler, I said, and his name poured from my lips the way water pours from a fountain, in long streams, uninterrupted, and just as I said his name, I was standing out in the clearing again. Thank you.